Good morning and welcome back. A woman tries stopping a robber from getting away after stealing her purse. The video you are about to see may be hard to watch, so we just want to warn you, but it does show the woman holding on to the thief as the car speeds down a street in San Francisco. She's knocked to the ground, but the car keeps going. The attack is just the latest in a series of crimes against people of Asian descent. Now, it is unclear if the woman was hurt. No arrests have been made. Oh, my goodness.
That is devastating and hard to watch. Yikes. One of the women accusing New York Governor Andrew Cuomo of sexual harassment says she will not cooperate with the impeachment investigation. Analysts telling the New York Post she cannot participate knowing there's a lack of transparency and it's political. She joins former Cuomo aide Lindsey Boylan in refusing to cooperate in the probe. List decided not to come forward after the state's Assembly Judiciary Committee revealed the investigation into the allegations against Cuomo would likely take months instead of weeks.
How about this? The helicopter could soon take flight on Mars. NASA is preparing a 4-pound mini chopper named Ingenuity for the first time ever aircraft flight on another planet. Ingenuity arrived on Mars with NASA's Perseverance rover last month. The chopper includes a postage-sized piece of fabric from the Wright brothers' first airplane.
Wow.
NASA says it could take flight as soon as April 8th.
It's a 4-pound little guy. That's very cool. Prince Harry lands a new job in Silicon Valley. The Duke of Sussex will be a chief impact officer for a coaching and mental health startup called BetterUp. The company touting his role, tweeting in part, Prince Harry will work to champion the importance of focusing on preventative mental fitness and human potential worldwide.
How about this? Dolphins in Brooklyn. Yeah, take a look. New Yorkers get a rare sighting in the city's East River. The pair spotted swimming close to the shore. Experts predict more ocean wildlife could make an appearance because of improved water quality, partly from less boat traffic due to the pandemic. That's interesting.
Wow, I feel bad for those dolphins. Go back to cleaner waters. Come on.
Get out of New York.
Yeah, and we leave you with this. Free donuts starting today. Dunkin' is offering free donuts every Wednesday until April 21st to receive the sweet deal. You need to sign up for the chain's reward program. That's an important part.
And it comes after rival Krispy Kreme announced it would give free donuts to those who showed a COVID vaccination card.
That is great. And you know, I said that I've never had a Krispy Kreme donut. I revealed that to you yesterday. After my vaccine, that's the first thing I'm going to do.
I like it.
Until then,
Fox and Friends starts now.
Mass shooting in Colorado is reigniting the debate over gun control.
We can ban assault weapons. We do not need more gun control. We need more idiot control.
President Biden set to meet with immigration advisors as Mexico's president blames him for the surge.
And the mayor of Gila Bend, Arizona, considering declaring a state of emergency because of what's going on at the border.
The nation's largest teachers unions is now fighting the CDC's new physical distancing guidelines.
What these teachers unions are doing now is trying to continue a situation where these teachers don't have to work and are getting paid.
Service workers at Smith College forced to undergo anti-bias training after they were wrongly accused of racism.
It has created havoc among the whole workforce.
Take a look at this. Mr. Biden is considering increasing tax rates, and the Job Creators Network's response, heck no.
Good morning, everybody. On this Wednesday, we start with the tragedy in Colorado as we take a live look at the White House, where the flag, as you can see, at half-staff to honor the victims here.
And we're learning more about those victims, including the heroic police officer who died while trying to save others.
Jeff Paul is live in Boulder with more as new details emerge about the suspect. Jeff?
Yeah, investigators say this is still all in its earliest phases, and that's a big part of the reason why you see behind us the store and the area around it is still fenced off as investigators continue to comb through evidence. But as you see, it hasn't stopped folks from coming out here to pay tribute to the 10 innocent people who were killed. People have left flowers, candles, and above all, the message and the words, Boulder Strong. They're trying to honor people like Kevin Mahoney, a dad who had just walked his daughter down the aisle last summer, and people like Ricky Olds, a 25-year-old manager at the grocery store. We are also learning more about the suspect, 21-year-old Ahmad Alissa. He faces 10 counts of first-degree murder. According to the New York Times, his identity was known to the FBI because he was linked to someone else who was under investigation. His brother described him as a reportedly person with mental health issues. Investigators, like Boulder's chief of police, had a message regarding how the case will move forward.
We are committed with state, local, and federal authorities for a thorough investigation, and will bring justice to each of these families.
Now, the suspect is due in court tomorrow for his first appearance. Steve, Will, Rachel.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much.
It's heartbreaking. You know, there was amazing footage of people leaving flowers all over the police officer Eric Talley's car. It was just one of the most touching tributes I've ever seen. His car is just overflowing with flowers.
And I read a story yesterday that the hero police officer apparently had a very lucrative job in IT and gave it up about 10 years ago to go into law enforcement.
Yeah.
Because when the shooting started, he was the guy right there, Officer Talley, who ran toward the trouble and ultimately gave his life to try to save people.
Father of 7. Amazing.
Obviously heard the call to serve. You know, I think there's been an honorable movement in this country, in the media, and I believe also in the culture at large, to talk more about the victims and certainly the heroes in these instances, and talk less about the perpetrator, the suspected shooter. Fame is often, it seems, what they're searching for, so do not give them that fame. What more, it perpetuates copycats. But in that vacuum, it seems others step up to blame law-abiding citizens and their rights when it comes to these horrible incidences in our country. So, of course, the push began yesterday among politicians and many in the media to begin the call for gun control. Here's Joe Biden and many politicians on the Democratic side of the aisle doing just that.
We can ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines in this country once again.
The Senate is going to debate and address the epidemic of gun violence in this country.
I'm going to try to bring a bill on gun safety and gun violence to the full committee for a debate.
Inaction by this Congress makes us complicit.
For years, Democrats have pushed for action to stop this killing with common sense reform that will save lives. Now, we can act, and we will.
When Congress doesn't do anything year after year, decade after decade, in the wake of mass shooting after mass shooting, these minds that are starting to become unhinged imply that it's okay.
So it's interesting. We're on the heels of, another, in Atlanta, we had the shooting
at the spa.
That's right. And that one was blamed on racial issues, white supremacy. This one was also initially, blamed on white supremacy until they found out that the shooter was a Syrian refugee. And then it turned to gun control, as you see right here. Senator John Kennedy was on last night on Fox, and here's what he had to say about why they went to gun control.
We do not need more gun control. We need more idiot control. How do we do that? We've already tried. The Republicans had a bill to strengthen our national database. You know why the bill didn't pass? Many of my Democratic colleagues filibustered it. They just don't believe in the Second Amendment. If a bad guy shoots a cop, it's the gun's problem. If a cop shoots a bad guy, it's the cop's fault.
I hear you.
If it weren't for double standards here, we wouldn't have any standards at all.
It is interesting that the senator from Louisiana mentioned the filibuster and how Democrats tried to filibuster in the past. Right now, what is going on Capitol Hill, yesterday the Senate Judiciary Committee had a hearing, and Joe Biden issued a plea for, Congress to do something. And what may happen in the Senate, because the House has passed bills, the Senate, what they need now is they need 10 Republicans to come over to the Democratic side to get something passed because of the filibuster. But now there are a number of Democrats who say, you know what? We don't need the 60. We just need a simple majority. And so they are using this, perhaps, I was reading in the Washington Post today, as another excuse, another reason, I should say, to get rid of the filibuster so that they can pass it with 50. They've got 50 in the Senate, plus Kamala Harris breaks the tie.
Well, Jen Psaki said that Joe Biden will also look at using executive action to implement some of his desired gun control measures. You know, it's become such a familiar story. Incident after incident, tragedy after tragedy, a rush, as you pointed out, Rachel, to blame someone, blame something, to get ahead of due process, to get ahead of the evidence, to get ahead of the facts. And sadly, that is the knee-jerk reaction of our media. Before we know a single thing, can we blame someone? Can we blame a race? Can we blame a right? Can we blame guns? It was no different yesterday. Watch.
I remember the Newtown massacre and the feeling like, if not now, when? And yet those efforts largely came to naught, at least federally. What can you do now to make a difference this time around?
Countries around the world that look at us and say, what is wrong with you, United States of America?
People in this world, the country and the world are laughing at us. They think we're crazy in this country, which we are. And now that we have Democrats in control, they need to do something about it.
I feel like a hostage to the selfish people that insist on owning these types of weapons. That is not freedom in this country. You are not a patriot because you think you have the right to own these types of weapons. You are not a patriot.
You said that, you know, we don't have all the facts yet. You're right, but we do know one thing that's in common with all of these, from Newtown to the Atlanta shooting to this shooting in Colorado. It's mental health. We know our mental health system is strained. We know that anyone who would, you know, kill 10 people in a grocery store has to not be right in the head. So I don't understand why we can't find common ground around mental health issues, which are clearly a problem and have been even further strained during the pandemic.
Well, regarding Washington and what they're considering right now, it is unclear if any of the bills or any of the executive orders that Joe Biden is considering would have made a difference. What new gun law would have stopped what happened in Colorado? That is the question.
We've tried this. We've had this experiment play out in real time. And the answer, Steve, we know is none. But to get some reaction to that media reaction, let's bring in Fox News contributor and media opinion columnist for The Hill, Joe Concha. Joe, you just heard that montage of the media immediately reacting by calling for gun control. What's your reaction?
It's always a rush to judgment, a rush to motive, Will, right? We saw it with the Atlanta shooting that Rachel brought up, where that was blamed on white supremacy, or that was blamed on a series of things where no one had the evidence yet. And now we're seeing with that shooting, it's probably a sex addiction that led to that horrific carrying out of killing of 2 white people, 6 Asian people, Hispanic injured in Atlanta. Never let a crisis go to waste, it was a prominent Democrat saying once, and that appears to be the case here. The questions are to what you brought up earlier. Would a universal background check have prevented this shooting in Colorado? Would banning AK-15s or any assault rifles here have stopped this shooter from carrying out these killings? There's 300 million guns already owned legally by people in the U.S. Candidate Biden said he would put Beto O'Rourke in charge of taking those guns back. Is that the next step after this particular executive order is passed, or they pass some sort of gun control through the Congress and the Senate? That's a very fair question to ask, and it's very interesting that the White House press secretary and Jen Psaki said that executive orders would be used here perhaps as an option. Well, of course they will. There have been dozens of executive orders that have been signed by President Biden after candidate Biden said that only dictators operate that way in terms of bypassing Congress and using executive orders. So this is where we are now. And again, that Georgia Senate race, those runoffs in January loom so large right now that if those went the other way, then suddenly we're not even talking about these sort of things anymore or a filibuster. But elections have consequences, unfortunately, guys.
I just remember, Joe, that back in Newtown, there were parents that came forward after that shooting and said, I tried to get help for my kid who has mental issues, and I can't get them in. There's not enough. They won't take them. There's not enough people. That's even worse now. So even if that family had tried to help their son, you know, in Colorado, the chances are they probably wouldn't have even been able to find a therapist or a facility to get them into. It's just, I don't understand why that's not part of the solution and why it instantly goes to gun control.
And Rachel, you can't even say for a second that, well, I don't know, is the money available? Well, at last check, a $2 trillion COVID relief bill, which had very little to do with COVID relief, was just passed. Now you have the Biden administration floating $3 trillion for infrastructure that really deals with climate change and equality. So of all that money, how much is allocated towards mental health? I'm not hearing very much about that in terms of media reports or in terms of what is actually in the COVID relief bill or the infrastructure bill. We absolutely need money allocated there, guys.
Tomorrow night on Fox, President Joe Biden is going to be having his first televised press conference from the East Room of the White House. Of course, we are positive there will be a lot of questions regarding gun control and what he intends to do and action by the Congress. But the other item of great interest to so much of the country right now is immigration. And when you look at the surge on our southern border, the data from the federal government shows that in the month of February, 100,000 people were apprehended trying to get into America. 100,000. Last year, same month, 36,000. Sure seems like a surge to us, but not to some people who wrote a column for the Washington Post. They are University of California researchers, 3 of them. They say, we analyzed monthly CBP data from 2012 to now and found no crisis or surge that can be attributed to the Biden administration policies. Rather, the current increase in apprehensions fits a predictable pattern of seasonal changes in undocumented immigration combined with the backlog of demand because of 2020's coronavirus border closure. I would challenge those 3 people who wrote that to come on this program and debate somebody from the other side about whether or not it is a surge, because we have heard from so many people the reason so many people are coming right now is because Joe Biden said, when I'm elected, you can come in.
We heard that from the migrants themselves.
Right, and now they're here.
Interviewed, they're flying his flag.
I'm here.
Yeah, numbers matter and words matter, right? The numbers are, in one facility, for instance, in Donna, Texas, you are at 729% capacity, which at last check during a pandemic cannot be a good thing. And words matter. Candidate Biden, again, who apparently has never met President Biden, said literally during one debate in 2019, surge the border, come here. And he basically invited Central America in, open. And now we see the result. The door is open. So the Washington Post says democracy dies in darkness. No, democracy dies in delusion when you see what's going on at the southern border, where Mexico's president says that this is due to President Biden. And Democrats in those border states are saying the same thing. So the Washington Post can spin this all they want, but the facts are the facts and the numbers are the numbers, and we see what's happening on the ground, guys.
Well, here's what President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador actually said. He said Biden is causing the border surge. Expectations were created.
It's not a surge. Remember, it's not a surge.
It's not a surge. Expectations were created that with the government of President Biden, there would be better treatment of migrants. And this has caused Central American migrants and also from our country wanting to cross the border, thinking that it is easier to do so. I mean, maybe he needs to have a sit down with Obrador.
That would be smart. Or maybe go to the border, for that matter, and visit what's going on down there. And when the vice president of the United States was asked, are you going to go to the border, she laughed like she was at the Comedy Cellar in downtown Manhattan because, well, and she said, well, I've been to the border before. Yeah, years ago you've been there. So actions matter as well. And it would be nice to see the president address this by visiting or allowing more media in terms of accessing these migrant facilities or going on ride-alongs with Border Patrol, but there's been a blackout only until about yesterday, and then anything we're seeing out of there is very limited and controlled. So, yeah, the honest and transparent administration when it comes to the media has been anything but, particularly when we're talking about this issue.
You know, when you see these stories like the Washington Post, you start to wonder if their purpose is not to report on reality, but to rather shape reality, not to tell you the truth so that you can make decisions in life, rather lie to you so that you will do what they want you to do in life. One last point on this, Joe. Tomorrow, as Steve mentioned, the president will be in front of a podium ready to take questions, we presume, for the first time in 62 days. I believe it will be one of the longest we've seen in any presidential administration before they took questions from the press. Do you expect a rigorous questioning of Joe Biden?
Well, I know we'll get one from Peter Doocy or two. That's certainly for sure. Hopefully some other media members start to do their job and ask very fair questions that you could ask this president. I have three that I'll go through quickly if you don't mind, guys. Sir, you called the governors of Texas and Mississippi Neanderthals for lifting their mask mandates. Yet, as to my point earlier, you're allowing facilities to be filled to 700% along the U.S. border with migrants testing positive by the hundreds. Some of those migrants, many of those migrants, are now being released into the U.S. population without quarantining. Is that literally the definition of a super spreader event, sir? I'd like to see Mr. Biden, without a teleprompter, answer that question. Also, sir, you said your $1.9 trillion COVID relief package was essential for reopening schools, yet most of the money that's allocated to reopening those schools isn't going to be spent till next year, until after the pandemic is over. Right. What do you say to that, sir? And then finally, you said you're a unity president to all Americans, yet you're passing many things by executive order. You're not even meeting with Republicans. Your $1.9 trillion relief package didn't have any concessions to Republicans. So is this how you define unity, sir? I'd like to see the answers to those questions. Hopefully some folks are watching right now. Steal them. I don't care. Take them. I want to see those questions asked.
Okay, there he is, Joe Concha, with 3 questions and 3 reasons why he will never be invited to a White House
I was just going to say that, seriously. With those questions, you're not invited.
Sorry, those are too hard. All right, Joe, thank you very much.
I have not been not invited before. Thanks, Steve.
See you later. All right, it is 18 minutes after the top of the hour. Jillian joins us on this Wednesday. Good morning to you.
Good morning, and we begin with a Fox News alert. Overnight, the remains of a missing firefighter from the raging inferno at a New York nursing home are escorted to the medical examiner's office. Clarkstown supervisor says a news conference later today will reveal, quote, more about this wonderful volunteer firefighter who paid the ultimate sacrifice. One resident from Evergreen Court Home for Adults was killed, with several others injured. State and local police are assisting in the investigation. One of the women accusing New York Governor Andrew Cuomo of sexual harassment says she will not cooperate with the impeachment investigation. Analysts telling the New York Post she cannot participate knowing there's a lack of transparency and it's political. She joins former Cuomo aide Lindsey Boylan in refusing to cooperate with the probe. Liz decided not to come forward after the state assembly's Judiciary Committee revealed the investigation into the allegations against Cuomo would likely take months instead of weeks. Texas, Georgia, and Indiana are the latest states to make COVID-19 vaccinations available to anyone over 16 years of age. Georgia will start Thursday, Texas on Monday, and Indiana next Wednesday. Mississippi and Alaska are already vaccinating teens, but West Virginia, Tennessee, and Arizona will expand access within the next few weeks. Legendary actor George Segal has died. His acting career spanned decades. He was best known for his role in the 1966 film Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
I work out.
Do you?
Well, you never know. You know, once you have it.
You never know when it's going to come in handy.
I was going to say, why give it up until you have to?
Segal went on to play several TV and movie roles, including the hit series The Goldbergs. Segal's wife says he passed away due to complications from bypass surgery. He was 87. I'll send it back to you.
He was a great actor.
Yeah, he was.
What a life. All right, Jillian,
Thanks, Jillian.
Thank you very much. It is exactly 6:20 here in the East. One of the nation's largest teachers' unions, the #2 union, is now fighting the new CDC guidelines that says it's okay to put those desks 3 feet apart. So what happened to following the science to get kids back in schools? We're going to tell you what we know coming up right here on Fox and Friends. Welcome back. We got the drone in the house. Good to have you. You know, we have heard, you know that expression, follow the money? You follow the money and you see that the Democrats were able to pass a close to $2 trillion coronavirus relief bill that would, among other things, help us reopen America's schools. Well, they got the money and the schools still aren't open. So when you follow the science, it was a couple of days ago that the CDC came out with new instructions that said, we've looked at the science, we've looked at the data, and it is okay to have kids in a classroom, not 6 feet apart, but 3 feet apart. So you can essentially double the number of people in certain rooms, or at least increase capacity. So you would think that would be the green light, Rachel and Will, that now that America's schools are open because the CDC says you can pack a lot more kids in there. But follow the wait a minute now.
Yeah, absolutely. The American Federation of Teachers, their president at least, Randi Weingartner, is not buying what you just sold, Steve. She's saying, we are not convinced that the evidence supports changing physical distancing requirements at this time. Our concern is that the cited studies do not identify the baseline mitigation strategies needed to support 3 feet of physical distancing. They don't want to come back at 3 feet of physical distancing. I do share one concern with the American Federation of Teachers. These guidelines don't seem to be consistent science at the very least. The lesson from this 3 feet issue to me is 6 feet was never really science in the first place. But that being said, I'm very capable of following the incentive, and it's very clear that these teachers' unions simply do not want to get back in the classroom, whether or not it be 6 feet, 3 feet, mask mandate or no mask mandate. They've had every opportunity to get back to work, and at every opportunity, the answer is no.
Yeah, I mean, they passed this massive bill, which I call extortion, right? And so our kids are hostage. We give them the money, and they still don't take care of the kids in the classroom. Britt Hume was on last night on Primetime with Brian Kilmeade. Here's why he thinks the teachers don't want to cut the deal.
The rationale for keeping schools closed has never made any sense to start with. And now, at this stage, with cases declining, and we know more and more now about how safely kids can be in schools and how close they can sit together and all the rest of it, it makes no sense whatsoever. And I don't see how parents can escape the conclusion that what these teachers' unions are doing now is trying to continue a situation where these teachers don't have to work and are getting paid. It's a pretty good deal for them if you think of it, but it's a terrible deal for kids.
Well, it is a terrible thing for kids, and you got to wonder if you're a parent with your kids in one of these union schools, it's like, how come the kids are all going to school in Florida and places like that?
In Catholic schools, yeah.
Yeah, have been open from the get-go. Joe Biden has said in public he wants to get as many schools open as possible. Unfortunately, you look at what Randi Weingarten said, in addition to, we don't trust the science, you would hope that she would trust her own science teachers, but they're not going to school. She says, in addition to the 3 feet, 6 feet business, she says, we need to have universal masking. We need to have better ventilation, especially in the old buildings, which I guess means build new schools. And this is what's going to keep the teachers out of the schools this year through the summer. And that is, she says, we've got to have shots for everybody in the school, and we just know mathematically that is impossible. Ask the math teacher.
And there's a lot of parents who don't want their kids to be vaccinated because they said, my kid's not going to, die from COVID, so I don't want them to have the vaccine. So there's a lot of issues, but also a lot of parents are saying...
anti-vaxxers?
What? No, I mean, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. My kids get vaccines, but I don't want them to take the COVID vaccine because they don't need it. But that said, I would say that there's a lot of teachers who are good, who aren't activists like the ones in the teachers' unions. However, at some point, if you're part of the union, you're part of the problem. So maybe it's time for some of these teachers who are good teachers, who want to go back to school, to start fighting their own teachers' unions to say, stop politicizing this. It's making teachers look bad.
Absolutely. It's despicable to keep kids out of a classroom at this point, a year into this pandemic. A border town in Arizona declares a state of emergency due to the migrant surge, and the mayor there is blaming the Biden administration for sending migrants to his town by bus. He joins us next.
Good morning. We are back with some quick headlines now. And a nurse and correctional officer are killed after an inmate attacks prison staff in Iowa. It happened inside the infirmary. Prison officials say the nurse and officer died from their injuries. The inmate's identity has not been released. An investigation is underway. A Fox News alert now. The world's busiest maritime trade route is thrown into turmoil after a large cargo ship blocks traffic in both directions. The massive vessel running aground when it was overcome by strong winds and lost power in Egypt's Suez Canal. Other ships are being diverted to another channel. It's unclear how long it will take for the ship to resume course. Two Democratic senators say they will no longer stand in the way of President Biden's cabinet nominations. Senators Mazie Hirono and Tammy Duckworth had vowed to vote against the president's nominations, citing a lack of Asian American representation. They reversed their position after the White House said it would add an Asian American Pacific Islander liaison to its staff. That is the look at your headlines. Rachel, I'll send it to you.
Thank you so much, Jillian. Well, a border town mayor is declaring a state of emergency due to the migrant surge and blaming the Biden administration for sending migrants to his town by bus. Gila Bend, Arizona is located about halfway between Mexico and Phoenix and has fewer than 2,000 residents. Mayor Chris Riggs joins me now. Welcome, Mayor.
Thank you.
So tell me exactly what's happening. They come into your town on bus and they drop them off where?
Well, Rachel, what they do is they either bring them by bus, by van, or even by their fill trucks. And they bring them to one of our community parks. And we really don't have a lot of parks, but we have one centralized park where they bring them and they drop them off there and then they leave.
Do you know anything? Does the federal government tell you anything about them? What their names are? Do they have a criminal history? Have they had COVID tests? Anything?
They'll tell us they haven't had a COVID test because they don't do that at the facility. But other than that, they're giving us nothing. Absolutely nothing. And we have asked repeatedly for documentation on who these people are, where they're from, if they do have a criminal history. They'll sometimes tell us, well, they don't check for in the United States. And that really is not what I'm concerned about. I'm more concerned about their country of origin.
Right. This is truly outrageous. Has the federal government offered help? I mean, you're a town of 2,000. How is this straining the resources in your town?
They've offered us no help. Last night, I literally had to declare a state of emergency. I did it through my council, so it was very obvious, so I wasn't trying to be political about it, that this is beyond what we are capable of doing as a community of about 2,000 people. We just simply can't do it. We can't afford to continue to receive these people and then try to get them to places where they're going to be safe and protected. We literally have nothing here for them. We have no housing. We have very limited food, additional food and other resources. So I really don't understand why we were even selected for these drops.
And you have had no response from the federal government. You've reached out to the Biden administration. You've reached out to your congressional representative. Nothing?
I'm getting nothing. The only people that seem to be willing to help are a few of our state representatives. I've had assistance from Senator Sinema. I've had assistance from Congressman Biggs, and I've had assistance from Arizona Representative Joel John. Other than that, those are the only people that have reached out to my community. Nobody from the Biden administration. And I understand that they are talking to other mayors in the large cities. A good example would be the city of Mesa. Their mayor was on CNN.
Really quickly, has the crime rate changed at all since this has happened?
Yes, we've seen an uptick in crime.
All right. Well, thank you, Mayor Riggs. We really appreciate you joining us on the show. This is a really just unbelievable story. We wonder where else it's happening. Thank you for sharing this information with us.
Thank you.
Right. Service workers at a Massachusetts college are forced to take anti-bias training after being falsely accused of racism. And now civil rights advocates, including our next guest, want an apology. Stay with us.
Service workers at Smith College in Massachusetts were forced to undergo mandatory anti-bias training after being wrongfully accused of racism. And now black civil rights advocates are demanding an apology, writing, quote, "Many of us participated in the civil rights movement, fighting for equal treatment under the law. We didn't march so that Americans of any race could be presumed guilty and punished for the false accusations, while elite institutions that employ them cower in fear of a social media mob. Please consider that many black Americans find that training reduces us simply to a racial category, profoundly condescending and dehumanizing." Our next guest wrote that letter to Smith College. Bob Woodson is the founder and president of the Woodson Center, and 1776 unites us. Good morning, Bob. Very happy to have you this morning.
Good morning.
Before we get into the letter and the desire for an apology, would you help bring us up to date? What is it that happened at Smith College that forced or introduced this anti-bias training into the university atmosphere?
This young student was in an unauthorized area, a dining room, and she was asked by the janitor and the security to leave politely, and she left And then when she got outside, she claimed that she was profiled because she was eating while black. And therefore, she doxed the cafeteria worker and the janitor, and then falsely claimed that they were profiling her when in fact she was wrong. And as a consequence, the ACLU came in and supported her claims. The president of the college, before she examined any of the facts, agreed and demanded that those workers be sanctioned. Some of them were released, and it's created a national scandal. By doxing one of the workers, she was threatened. Someone called and said, "You should die." And a security officer who was there for 35 years with an unblemished record was compelled to leave, all because this young student wanted to become the next racial martyr and brought false charges of racism against these workers.
Yeah, janitor and a cafeteria employee at Smith College, who I'm sure make less
and
than
a security
guard, who I'm sure make less than the annual tuition at Smith College. So, Bob, you and 40-some-odd other black intellectuals have written a letter to Smith College because the president of that university has introduced anti-bias training to the entire university faculty and curriculum. What is it you have said in your letter that you want to see in response to this anti-bias training?
First of all, it has become race grievance training, I call it, because it's become the latest growth industry. Millions of dollars are being wasted in this anti-bias training. It is also devastating to the social fabric of this country. We have weaponized race now, and it's demeaning to these workers. They live in fear every day. Some of them who have left can't find other jobs. So we believe that the school owes more than just an apology. They should compensate some of these families for the material loss of income. So it's more than that, but it's damaging the social fabric of this nation. So we hope others will follow our lead and become woke busters.
Here's what Smith College has said to Fox and Friends in response to request for, quote, they said Smith received the letter yesterday and it is reviewing it. Bob, you know, there's some impressive names on this list, yours included, obviously, some impressive intellectuals who are asking that this type of training be stopped. What is the damage? You mentioned it just a moment ago. This is doing damage to our nation. What is the damage?
It really is, because we're being tribalized. I mean, all over the nation, race is the lens through which we see everything. There are zero-sum solutions. The assumption is that blacks are being treated as if we're an exotic pet, and therefore whites must treat us as if we are special, and that's insulting. It's dehumanizing, it's polarizing, it's causing people to be sanctioned, losing their jobs because someone accused them of being racism. In one case, a teacher told a student they no longer can use Dr. King as the theme for an essay because he used the word Negro, and these guilty white folks believe that somehow that's offensive to blacks. So all over the country, we're seeing examples of racial bias training being the new standard and the new norm, and it's contrary to everything Dr. King and some of us fought for. We fought for it to be judged by the content of our character, not the color of our skin. But that's being perverted, and so we're against that perversion.
Absolutely. It seems pretty intuitive that most of us want to be judged for who we are at our core level, our intellect, our moral core, our spirit, not our shallow characteristics. But sadly, it seems America is moving in another direction right now. Bob Woodson, always good to talk to you. Such great insight. Thank you for joining us this morning.
And thank you.
All right. A billboard in the heart of Times Square calling out President Biden for considering eliminating a tax deduction for small businesses. We'll talk to the group behind that no-nonsense.
Our next guests have been rewarding their employees and growing businesses thanks to the deduction. And right now with more, we've got HM Manufacturing President Nicole Walter, joined by the man behind the billboard, Executive Director of the Job Creators Network, Alfredo Ortez. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Alfredo, let's start with you. Why did you want to put this billboard up in Times Square?
Yeah, Steve, well, this is all part of our Bring Small Businesses Back campaign that just kicked off. We thought this would be a great way to actually kick it off because obviously, as you can tell, we know exactly where we stand on this. We say hell no to Joe Biden's plan here to raise taxes on small businesses. As you know, Steve, 2020 was a horrific year for our small business owners. Tens of thousands of small businesses being closed, millions of people losing their jobs. Thank goodness for the Paycheck Protection Program, which was put in place that saved millions of people and millions of jobs, 51 million jobs, in fact. And instead of coming up with programs like that to help our small business owners, get out of this pandemic, what are they doing? They're coming back with an idea like raising taxes on our small businesses. And that's why to that, Steve, we say hell no. Not on our watch.
Okay, so Nicole, you run your family business now for the last couple of years. One of the things Joe Biden is considering is phasing out the pass-through entity deductions. And that impacts, I'm reading here, that would raise taxes on at least 90% of small businesses across the country. How would this move by Biden and the Congress impact small businesses like yours and all the others?
Well, I think it would be super detrimental. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was so large for this company of mine. We are a family business. I'm second generation. I employ 20 employees, and we're growing. I'm looking for a second shift if possible. I bought $750,000 worth of capital equipment, which created jobs. Yeah. Because of those jobs, I sent for training, which increased the employees' wages. I was able to give incentives and bonuses, things that I wasn't able to do in years past. Sure. So I think this would be a really bad call. We're just getting out of COVID lockdowns, and it's hurting small businesses more than ever. So raising taxes would be the worst possible situation.
Real briefly, Alfredo, Joe Biden and the Democrats have a big wish list. They got to pay for it somehow. Why not just tax businesses more? Because it's not going to hurt them. Ultimately, it does because it's going to cost people jobs.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And we know that the corporate tax rate, we knew that was right in the middle of their target, going from 21 to 28%. That's still a 35% increase. But from a small business perspective, Steve, we got to remember 2/3 of job creation is in the hands of small businesses. And these small businesses, not only are they the backbone of our country, they're the backbone of our communities. Look at the jerseys, for example. If you go on a weekend, you go to the fields, a soccer field or a baseball field. Guess what the names are on those jerseys in terms of sponsors? It's not the big corporate names. Right. It's the local pizza guy or the deli guy or the dry cleaners. Those are the folks that support our communities, or the backbone of our communities. And that's the very group of people that the Biden administration, quite frankly, has declared war on. This is Biden's war on small business.
Well, read all about it in Times Square thanks to your billboard. Nicole and Alfredo, we thank you very much for joining us live today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet. Good luck. All right, meanwhile, as the border crisis unfolds, Mexico's president joins the chorus blaming President Biden's policies